I mind, welcome to the RUNcensored podcast with me, Ben Mounter, Gary House, and another special guest, 3 in a row, Paul Booth. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. I always put people on the spot when we get a guest on because I'd like you to do a little introduction about yourself, if that's okay. It doesn't have to be too long. You don't have to talk about your wedding.
Not 3.5 hours.
Not 3.5 hours, but just a flavour of like who you are and what your kind of involvement is in the industry and the sport.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks. Thanks for the invite. My main role is a nutritionist, particularly in trail and ultra running. Work as a physiologist as well. So, been an academic for about 25 years, not always in the same subject. But then about 10 years ago, I kind of retrained as a nutritionist, just wanted to do something different. And like the idea was to work in elite ultra and trail running. So I kind of worked through that, did a couple of masters in sports nutrition, various other bits. And then that kind of led me to get out of academia and set up my own business. So I took on a lot of clients then. And then I ended up working for the Salomon international team as their lead nutritionist, which is cool. Get to meet and work with some of the best ultra runners in the world. And then, a few years ago, I won a PhD scholarship. So I'm on the final year of that at the moment. And that pretty much brings me up to speed with it.
Fantastic. I mean, it's incredible that you are accessing and working with all these high profile athletes, because 2 of which, and they're not on the Salomon team, but I do know of this relationship you've got with the winners of this year's UTMB. So Tom Evans and Ruth Croft. So as well as the Salomon team, how did all that kind of come about? Because that's not something that just happens overnight. What was the connection and how did those links to these elite athletes happen?
So with Ruth and Tom, for example, that started as a conversation between me and Tom. I forget, we just got chatting online like you do. And anyway, I was kind of chatting to him about some of my work and research work. And then we had like conversation. He said, "Oh, will you come on board to be my nutrition?" He said, "My last 2 UTMBs, as people probably know, I've DNF'd." And he said, "It's been down to my nutrition." He said, "Will you get on board and help me with that?" I was mega busy at the time and I wasn't really taking any clients on, but you can't say no. I just couldn't say no to that. So I was like, yeah, all right. So we started a relationship quite early this year, actually, probably sort of February, early March time. Then obviously I had a little baby in between there as well. So we were able to really build and develop that relationship and actually work on a lot of stuff in his kind of day-to-day running, getting that sorted and, supporting what he's training and making sure he's getting the most out of that. And then I suppose a connection with Ruth came because Scott Johnson, who's Tom's coach, he's obviously is a coach for Ruth as well. So Tom is great because he'd put together like a little high performance team. So I was in there. David Sinclair was in there, who is sort of sports psychologist, sort of neurologist. He's like the number 1 guy in the business. He's good. So we got on really well. Joseph Mestrale, who's the data science guy who everyone been talking about, who's doing the pacing for Tom. And then obviously Scott Johnson was in there as well. So we spoke a lot, obviously, before UTMB, and actually it was great working on that team. But I got really friendly with Scott. He's a really great guy. And he said, "Oh, look, Ruth's had a few issues with her nutrition. Would you mind just having a chat with her?" And I was like, "No, definitely not. Go for it." So I had a chat with Ruth, and at the end of the conversation, she said, "Oh, will you work for me as my nutritionist?" And again, I thought, can't take anyone, but this is Ruth Croft. She came second in UTMB last year. She's got some of the fastest splits on UTMB. Of course. So I kind of took Ruth on. So a little bit later than Tom. So we didn't have quite as much time to work on certain things. And then, so it was a massive process with Tom, and then slightly less of a process with Ruth. And obviously, whatever we did, it worked because we both won this year. Whether that was to do anything with me or it's just the fact that they are, superior, like very gifted runners and very, very professional at what they do. With Salomon, that was a little bit more interesting. The fact that, so a lot of my research through my PhD is around like high carbohydrate intakes and essentially fueling an ultra, because there's nothing out there on it. And what there is very small. There's nothing, everything that's going on at the moment is all anecdotal. Yeah, there's nothing to support a lot of that, like particularly the sort of the uber high carb rates of like 120 grams and over. So anyway, I'd spoken a lot about that and been on various podcasts and various articles. And then in December last year, Salomon put their own high performance team together. And we said, right, what we want to do now is we want to make sure that, people are coming in-house and we've got a support team, which is modeled pretty much the same as what you would get in professional cycling. So there you've got performance chefs, you've got nutritionists, you've got the coaches in there, you've got a performance director. So they got staff over from Ineos Grenadiers, and my mate Aitor to come on as the performance manager for that, performance director. The performance chefs from Ineos Grenadiers came on as well. So then the first time, we got all that set up, and then I was invited to come in as the lead nutritionist. And I thought, this is a gift. This is an amazing project, because that was designed really to kind of change trail running in many respects and make it much more professional and bring it, into 2025 and beyond, particularly when people are looking to get trail running into the Olympics in the 2030s. This was kind of that first step. And again, you'll see it now with Golden Trail Series. He's on like TNT and other like Eurosport. The whole industry is just getting much bigger. And again, people are taking it more seriously. It's become more professionalized. So we built that team. And then we met really for the first time at the UTMB camp in Corsica, which was early May. And then that kind of really kicked off from there. So we've been building that since. And what we're trying to do there is, because people, like many of the runners, have got their own kind of little teams all over the place, a bit like Tom, for example, and Ruth. We're trying to kind of bring people in. So we're that centralized team that they can go to. And so far, we've had pretty good results. It's really working on building that culture and that understanding, because we've got runners from all around the world. And then obviously over the summer, that was Chamonix pretty much Chamonix and Courmayeur all the way through the summer. Yeah. So we developed it and built those relationships there. And that's kind of where I'm up to now. So up until this point, it's been a bit of a whirlwind, to be honest.
Yes. And I guess, and I've been guilty of it in the past as well, because like you say, if you are in trail and ultra world, a lot of the stuff that you try, whether you try and look into evidence or whatever, it's not in trail running a lot of the time. It's taken from cycling as a best example, because that's where a lot of it is. And the same with the teams, like you say. I guess a barrier at first is one, that someone like Tom might have his own team and everyone's got their own little nutritionist or whatever. But also, I guess, just the time spent together isn't as much as like a cycling team, obviously. So getting teams to have time together and spend time together, and then have you guys on board rather than just people testing kit, I guess, is the next step in these teams, I imagine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Bit of a sum of marginal gains mentality, isn't it? Like that Brailsford model where you try and change like all the like 10 things, and if you change 1 or 2% of each of those, you've got yourself 10%, haven't you? So I suppose it's
sometimes I think from me and like from people that aren't at elite level, I think sometimes they think the elite trail runners have got it all sorted out when it comes to nutrition and stuff. When you speak to them, they haven't really, and you might have a good race and then a bad race, and it's never going to be maybe perfect. I don't know. We'll maybe talk about maybe UTMB was perfect, but yeah, it definitely helps having a team on board. Never mind just yourself.
Yeah, and that's it. The big shock for me was, like the elites, like the absolute best in the world. A lot of the stuff is no different than when you get for an amateur. I was really, really surprised at that. And sometimes amateurs work even harder at that, because sometimes elites can get away with it and kind of take over, whereas a lot of amateurs can't. So they might work harder on it. And like some of the habits from elites, I'm like, whoa. So you're working on exactly the same things, which is quite fascinating. And you're still working on some of those things where you're trying to build in habits and new behaviors with people as well. And I mean, for me personally, even some of the absolute top guys, I still think they're leaving a lot of performance on the table, because there's so much stuff they can actually do in terms of their training, the structure around the training, in terms of nutrition, a few other bits. So I still think that in ultra and trail running, actually, people can still make quite big leaps forward in that.
I think it shows how much the sport's come on, even just the last few years, doesn't it? Like now it's a professional level at that elite standard now, and there's a lot of money going into the sport from the brands, from these pro teams. So I think this is testament to that, and it just shows the level of detail people are going in, like covering every base out there, not just with kit, not just with training, but it's beyond the running, isn't it now? It's like everything, it's recovery, it's nutrition, it's preparation, and this is like one aspect of that, isn't it?
So, massively.
Really seriously.
Yeah, and we're sort of thinking from a UK base as well. I think UK is like the 5th biggest country now for like, I mean, you'll probably know more about this, about the sports shoes connection, but yeah, I think the UK is the 5th biggest, but when you go over to Spain and China, that's absolutely massive over there. It's huge.
Oh, it's huge. It really is huge, yeah. There's a lot of money now in the sport, and it is growing at like a significant rate. And we had Hugh Chatfield on a couple of episodes ago, and we were talking about the worlds, and like the level now is increasing every single year. You're getting people like Jim Walmsley, who's a professional athlete, and just as an example, and Hugh's trying to compete with people like that, but Hugh's working 4 days a week. And, go back 10 years ago, there were very little pros on the circuit in the world champs, but now it's almost commonplace. And I think to medal, you've got to be either devoting yourself 80 to 100% of the time, and you've got to be pretty much full-time pro, haven't you? Because that's where it's going in the sport now. It's really come on leaps and bounds. And yeah, I mean, nutrition's just such a big part of that. I was actually with Tom, I spoke to him now last week, lucky enough to go out to Zinal with ASICS, and he came out as part of the trail camp, and I got an opportunity to talk to him at length. We were doing a relay together, and we were running in sort of teams of 4 and 5, and luckily for me, the other 3 people on the team were finding it quite hard work, which meant that me and Tom got to chat quite a lot on the run. But I was asking him about the nutrition and how he executed the plan at UTMB, and his approach to that, obviously working alongside you, when he talked about this traffic light system, where he was taking different levels of carbs on at different times, and he'd had it all mapped out visually, like his race. Not just he knew what climbs were coming up, and visually he's mapping the race out, but also he's knowing when to take what nutrition at what point. So it's obviously a personalised plan. That's something you've spoken to him about at great lengths and prepared before UTMB, isn't it, and practiced? Yeah,
and we did like the same for Ruth as well, similar system, which, because if you think about UTMB, it was a bit of a gamble, because obviously Tom had DNF'd what we thought was through like nutrition the previous 2 years. So like his performance times on those 2 when he DNF'd, he could have gone on to win if it wasn't for that. So you think, right, here's someone who's got the potential, but it's all coming down to nutrition. So I kind of had that weight on my shoulders. I was thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do here? But with UTMB as well, like there's this, like going back a few steps, there's this weird thing at the moment where everyone's just chucking 120 grams at people. One of the first things, like one of the very first conversations me and Tom had is like, look, I don't want to do 120 grams an hour. Like I get to a certain point and my gut won't deal with it. And for shorter races, maybe you can get away with 120 grams an hour. But for 19 hours plus for UTMB, no. And, you're just not going to need that either. And I mean, we can kind of talk about that more. So I thought, right, how do we fuel Tom properly on this? So I thought, let's go in it and let's look at it a little bit like cycling. So some of my mates who work in like the Tour de France, when I've spoken to them about 120 grams an hour and stuff like that, they're like, what? They're like, no, what we'll do is we'll give them 60 grams an hour, and then they'll get to a climb, and then we might bring it up. Or if it's the Queen stage, we'll bring it to 120 grams for this rider, but this one will stay on 80 or 90. And then even that, we said, we're never quite sure, because we leave it up to the riders, because we just can't control it all, because we don't know what's going to happen. It's a bit like ultra, and as careful as you put a plan in, there's always going to be, it's going to be a bit frilly around the edges. So with a traffic light system, it's simply, right, where do we need to have like carbohydrate availability the most, and where can we ease off on that? So it's looking through all of Tom's data, understanding his race and understanding him as an athlete to think, right, is he going to be pushing hard up this hill? Does he need a lot of fuel fat? So is he going to be fat dependent or carbohydrate dependent? Is he just going to be cruising this bit and actually he doesn't quite need as much fuel? He's going to take his foot off the gas. Is this a bit where he struggled, or is this a point where he might have fatigued in the past, or is this a point when he could make a breakaway? And again, because it's UTMB and we are going over 19 hours, it needs to be something that's practical that he can remember as well. So simply having a high, low and medium strategy is going to be able to support that as much as possible. And he'll be able to remember it and can go, okay, before Grand Col Ferret, we're on a red, so it's high along the balcony. So we know we're loading up for that, because actually on the way up, you're probably not going to eat as much. On the way down, certainly not, because you're just going to be, that great descent off there. You're just going to be swooping all the way back down to La Foulée. So you're not going to take on much there. So let's load up in advance. So we kind of worked all the way through like that. And actually, in terms of what he was taking on, the maximum he ever took on was 110 grams an hour. And that was only for, well, actually, it should have been for 3 hours in total for 4 hours in total across the race. In the end, it was only for 2 hours.
Yeah.
And we went down as low as 80 as well. Go on, sorry, Ben.
I'm going to say no. He said about this visual approach. He said he's a very visual athlete. He likes to map out the route, but also like this nutritional plan of like this traffic light system that you've just described there. That he also mentioned is he knew just from like the colours, like the visual representation of where he was on the map, like what to take and when. Because I said, like, do you set like your watch to an alarm to, I don't know, make sure you're fueling after 20, 30 minutes? He was like, no, this visual approach worked for him. And I suppose also what you were saying there is that every athlete is different. So the tolerance of how many carbs you can take on an hour will differ from athlete to athlete.
Yeah.
So my other question was going to be like, how much did that plan for Tom differ with Ruth? Was it almost the same, or could she tolerate more, or did she have a different approach? Or are you using the traffic light system for both?
Yeah, so exactly the same system for both. But so Tom, like historically, he'd done 120 grams an hour, and we dropped down. So in the end, Tom, perfectly on paper, Tom's average intake was 94 grams an hour. There was a couple of hours later on where I thought his gut had gone, and it hadn't. He was just sick of chewing stuff. So actually, we just dropped it a little bit because we were working with some solid foods, and we took those out. So his intake probably dropped to late 80s, 90 grams an hour. So we were pretty safe with that, which was great. My only theory on that was like, are we feeding him enough? Looking at his second half split from Chamonix to Chamonix, like I think that was the fastest second half split ever. So clearly it was more than enough. Yeah. Like when in the debrief after, it's like, right, did you ever have any points where you were low energy or struggling? No, absolutely fine, nailed it.
Same for Ruth as well then.
Yeah, exactly. So with Ruth, we kind of went the opposite way. So like with Ruth, in the previous year, she'd done 80 grams an hour on average ish, dropping down to 60 at times as well. But this year, so I don't know if you know anything about her race last year. So like she started off kind of really conservatively and really slow. And it was only in the second half that she really sped up, and she got that second place finish. So naturally this year she said, look, I want to be a bit more aggressive. I don't want to smash it at the start, but I just want like a better start to have more time. So for her to be aggressive, we said, right, let's go up then in terms of carbs. So the gamble there was, okay, what if we give her more than she's used to and a gut goes? So with both Tom and Ruth, I just did a serious amount of gut training beforehand.
I was going to say, because they're almost, you've got limited opportunities to test that out, haven't you? You can't do another 19-hour race or 20 plus for Ruth. So that was going to be my next question. How do you, right, it's all right, one thing, because I always speak about it, so one thing coming out with a plan, but how do you get to that point? So how were you gut training with, or how would you typically go about that? Because I know everyone would love to hear the perfect way of doing that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I'd say kind of sort of 3 points in there. I'm saying that I've only got 2 points, but I'm sure I'll think of a third by the time I get to that. Number one. So the research on that, all the really good research by a guy called Ricardo Costa from Monash University in Australia. And there's some good stuff that he talks about where when you're doing the gut training, go 20% higher. So if you're your athlete, you want them to take 100 grams an hour, let's say, gut train them on like 120 grams an hour, you've got about 20% buffer zone. So they'll get used to that. And then in the race, we dial it back and you've got that little bit of extra tolerance in there. So I always do that. And I might even bring it up a little bit higher, depending on what the session is. Other times, like I'll try different tactics in the week to gut train. And the key thing is, so there's two things about gut training, like gut training more than anything is just giving yourself like that kind of tolerance to taking on lots of food. Yeah. Regardless if you're going to take a high amount or a low amount, for instance. And occasionally people might shit the pants doing this. So you want to avoid that. So if you're kind of getting on that, you want to sort of balance it out. Because the thing is, like with Ruth, yeah, we were doing a block of training there where she was at teens at altitude. And this was her like major training block. So we didn't want to go in
mess that up either.
Exactly and disrupt that. We wanted to make sure it's quality training. So we had to structure the gut training around that. So it's picking times when it would be kind of recovery runs, but also trying it out on the longer runs. Because you say we can't do 19 hours, but if she's doing a run which is 6 hours on a Saturday, we can maybe target that, but don't want to ruin that. So it's going in really easy and moderating it. So initially with her gut training, she was like, I feel a bit bloated. I just didn't feel that good. So I was like, okay. So we changed it to a kind of a pyramid style. So sometimes we would start quite low or maybe on 60 grams and then we'd build it up to like 80 and then we'd go to 100 grams. And at the end, the last hour was 120. And then sometimes you'd start on like 120 and then you go down to 100, or you'd say, if you feel fine, stick it on 120 and see how long you can go. And if you feel, so again, and then on the shorter runs, like 2 hours, it was like, look, just take some toilet roll with you because it doesn't matter too much if it's like a bit of a recovery run. So it's building that up. And yeah, she took to it like a duck to water, like pretty quickly. So I was just, again, all the athletes I work with, I'm in on their training peaks. I'm just putting notes for her and Tom in every single day to guide them on that. And I'll speak to them through WhatsApp and we'll have lots of video calls. So I'll get that feedback constantly. So I was pretty confident about that. But as you just said, Gary, it's different when you get on a course. It's 19, 20 hours plus, and there's all these different things. So within the gut training, we'll also work on hydration. Because what I realized a few years ago with clients, I'd go to town, on like, do super complex plans with them, race plans, which are pointless because it all just falls apart in race because no one can remember, oh, should I take this or that? So you've got to make it complex, but simplify it. And that's what the traffic light system was about. People complain about the guts. I realized when I was getting people in the lab, I'd speak to people and go, okay, tell me how much you had to drink on that, like on a Lakeland 50. And be like, I had a 500 ml bottle. And I was like, oh, what, an hour? I'm like, no, during the whole race. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, okay, right. So it's your hydration because you get dehydrated, or actually you start to approach and beyond like loss of 2% body weight. That's when your gut will go. So it's turning it around and getting that hydration training first. But on the flip side of that, what I've noticed is some people just cannot. They might have a high sweat rate, but they can't handle like a high hydration rate.
Yeah.
So you've just got to build people's gut up as well for basically being able to take on, not over drinking because you're going to get hyponatremia, but like if it's hot weather and you struggle to take on more than 500 ml, you need to work on that seriously.
Yeah.
You need to be able to build that up.
Sounds like common sense, doesn't it? But like you say, it's people will work on their kit to the nth degree, and then, like you said, I'm not drinking water throughout the race, or I'm just drinking just water or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And they wonder why, and then they've got this solid nutrition plan, and then get to a checkpoint and they're having a pork pie and whatever, and then wondering why they can't neck a gel on the next climb. And it's like, it's just And it does sound like common sense, but unless people like yourself come and say that and explain, because like you say, there's still elite athletes that I'm sure still do the same mistakes.
Yeah.
You could see it as mistakes, but because also they're the kind of people that get to a certain level and then you can tolerate a lot. Like they're running so efficiently, they can go out and run for 5 hours and don't need anything necessarily.
Yeah.
No water, no food, and all that kind of stuff. So I guess it's just moving the needle towards being as a professional, like a Tom Evans is, as an example, closer to there, not just jumping in straight in at the deep end, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And that's it. It's about physiology. Like, it's not about gels. People always blame the gels, and it's a bit like when you're 14 and you find like a bottle of Malibu in your parents' cupboards, and you go down the park, get pissed up, and puke your guts up all night. It's not the Malibu. There's nothing wrong with a Malibu. It's just that you overdid it and you're not used to it. It's the same with gels. It's the fact that all of a sudden, like, people are going, oh, well, feeling sick, it's the gel. And it's not. It's because you've not trained your body to take that on. Or, like, you've listened to someone who said, take 140 grams. I mean, I know someone who was taking about 60 grams an hour, no names mentioned, but they heard another famous runner stroke coach say, I take 140 grams an hour. Their next race, they went out just straight off the bat.
Training.
No training, 140 grams, like DNF'd it, puked everywhere. And they're like, oh, it must have been the gels I was taking.
Yeah.
It was the gels you were taking, all 150 of them, in quick succession.
It's like me with the cocktails last weekend. It's the mix of gels, honest. I'll just stick to one gel next time.
I do like the comparison though, because I really understand that when you both explained it like that.
I always say it's like if they'll say I can't take on more. I can't do more than 40 grams an hour or whatever it is, and it's like I'm just impossible. I said it's not that, because like just take Boxing Day as an example. If I knock on your door, you can take on more carbohydrate. It's just an environment and a training kind of thing.
Yeah,
tolerance, isn't it?
Yeah, and some people come to me. In fact, some people pay me money and come to me then and say, oh, I don't really like gels. Don't want to work with gels. I'm like, well, deal with it. I don't like doing the washing up, but I still want to be married. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes you've got to do these things.
It's remarkable how many people in decent level athletes, or decent level runners, even I've had in the past, and it's, what's the alternative to gels and liquids? It's like
bonking.
And you can revert back to having a picnic at a checkpoint, but at some point, performance-wise, that's why that stuff is there. There isn't an alternative, really. You've just got to, and you will be able to train yourself to a certain level. Not, like you say, not everyone needs to be on that amount, but you have got to start moving yourself away from the old style, I think.
Yeah.
There's more nutritional brands and products on the market now than ever before, isn't there? There's a lot of choice. I guess the athletes that you work with have all got their own either affiliations with brands, and have you got a preferred one that you work with, or are you used to working across the board with all these brands? I mean, are Ruth and Tom taking the same types of gels in terms of brands, or are they mixing it up? Or
so this is the thing. Like 99% is all exactly the same. All the same. Like, it's a mixture of malted extra and fructose. Some people like Tailwind, instead of using malted extra, and they'll use glucose. So use dextrose powder and fructose. Tailwind high carb is actually malted extra and a bit of glucose with fructose. And that's it. People might use them in different ratios. So people might, historically, it's a 2-to-1 ratio of glucose to fructose. But people who want to sort of hit higher carbs, actually, it's sort of 1 to 0.8. So there's almost a parity between fructose and glucose. And again, malted extra is just a type of glucose. It's just got a bit of a lower osmolality, so it's going to be a bit easier on your gut at high amounts. So when it comes down to it, to be honest, nearly all of them are just about branding.
So there seems to be a race at the minute to have the biggest carb per gel or whatever. I've got a 200 gram gel here. But look how big it is, kind of thing. And it's like,
this one's got caffeine in it. And,
there is a bit of that, isn't it? And because, like you say, the marketing more than, I guess, education is pushing towards that way, which isn't a bad thing. But at the same time, I think sometimes you're in danger of being lost in all that and just I've got people that going out to races with 2 times 45-gram gels or whatever, but they can't take it on really, and I guess it is hard from a research point of view. Do you get almost caught between a researcher and like applying with these athletes in the field? Is that a bit of a, well, I'd love to do this in research, but I've got to do this with athletes?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, going back to what you're saying about the brands, because everyone's got their own sponsor. So
Yeah.
Ruth sponsored by Never Second, Tom sponsored by Morton, the Salomon team are sponsored by Morton. But every single athlete on that team has their own sponsor. So other Spanish athletes are sponsored by 226, who never heard of in the UK. A few of Ministry, and one of my next study, Ministry, have just sponsored that, who are a German brand, who are amazing, absolutely brilliant. They use all like natural flavorings, but a lot of these European brands just aren't known in the UK. Just because it's customs is so difficult now. And Bao, a French brand, quite natural. So it's always a bit of an odd thing. Whereas, like, you want to use certain things, but they might have a sponsor. Sorry, I'm hitting the microphone. What we do to get around, hoping none of these sponsors are listening. What we do to get around with that, we just put the gels in like the sponsors' branding bottles and things like that. Yeah. So for Tom, for example, what he said to me after it, he said, "Look, number one thing about the nutrition on that was the variety." He said, number one key above anything else, variety. That's what kept me going.
And that was another reason for asking the question, that, you know, probably the greatest contrast that I can think of is maybe like a high five gel compared to a Morton gel. You've got one that consistency wise is almost like a liquid, a very syrupy liquid, which is the high five. And then you've got the Morton gel, which I prefer, which is more like a jelly, and they both taste very different. So I suppose it's about not just banging in the same taste all the time, and because over I suppose that 19 hours you're going to want a bit of variety, aren't you, as it were. And if you're saying that, you know, for the most part 99% of the nutrition out there is more or less the same, but I suppose it's like flavors and taste and preference, isn't it, that way? So it's about as much as variety else, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. That number one is about that personal choice. What do you enjoy? And then I'll throw different brands and tons of stuff at people and say, look, try this or try that. And then I'll get them to feedback, and then we'll put a plan together through that. So again, like, sometimes I'll structure it depending on what it is around that glucose to fructose ratio. Sometimes I'll put it in where it just makes it easier. So going back to what we were saying about Tom's plan, part of the way to sort of for him to think about that, a mnemonic, is it called? Something like that. But that was like, all right, we've got certain points. When you hit this little dip or this plateau on this climb, I want you to take this gel there. Or there was a point when it was like, right, on this climb, when you put your poles away to run down the other side, when you put your poles away, we want you to pull out a PF62 because we know that we want you to essentially carb load up in advance. Yeah. So smash that on the top of the climb and then just go for it. So kind of little things like that as well. So sometimes it's what fits that point at that time, if that makes sense. But other times we go down and have like a Morton 100 gel, which is like 25 grams of carbs. And again, we would sort of back that up. So those times when Tom would be doing 110 grams, for example, we'd think about, it might be a bit of tailwind high carb there because it's through the night, it's cold, he's got his poles in his hands, he's got gloves on. We'd scale it back because people get more gut issues in the night, but this is also a technical section, so he's going to get less chance to eat, and he can't reach for a gel, things like that. But we'd use a sort of 80 section after 110 section to rest his gut a little bit, whether he needed it or not, I don't know. But you know, as always, if we went high, we'd make sure we were kind of going a little bit lower after it as well.
Even if like, because I'm sure it's because that sounds to me almost like a new way of necessarily doing it, because it might be the old, like, usually it'd just be take X amount of grams of carbs per hour for however many hours you can kind of stomach it.
Yeah.
Like, from an athlete point of view, I guess mentally it's probably quite a good thing to know that, okay, yeah, I have got to maximize at this point, but then for the next couple of hours I'm bringing it down again. And even just the mental side of that might help as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And also, like, if you're taking on loads you're just stacking it all up in your gut. Like you're just slowing down that gastric emptying. So you're just going to get a bit more of a drip feed from that.
Mm-hmm.
This might be a stupid question, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
It won't be as stupid as a question that I'm itching to ask you first.
You can go next, Chris.
I mean, I'm not competing anywhere near the same level as Tom or Ruth, and I'm not competing on the same distances. But let's say I was doing a long race, and a long race for me is probably a short one for them. But let's say it's like a 3-hour race. It gets to a point where even that quickly, I'm like, I don't know if I can stomach another, like the taste of another gel. I just want water. Like, is there ever a point within a nutritional plan for, say, UTMB where an athlete would just drink some water? Or is that right? I mean, I don't know if that's a stupid question or not, but
no, it's good.
I just, in my head now, I'm thinking it's always got to be a gel, or it's always got to be some sort of form of isotonic or something. But yeah, is that part of it as well?
Yeah. So as an example, for Tom, for UTMB, if you look at any pictures of him, he'll always have a bottle of, Morton or whatever it may be. The other bottle will always be water.
That's good to know.
Always. And then nearly every elite athlete I work with now, well, no, in fact, every elite athlete I work with now, their preference is always bottle of high carb, bottle of water, like everyone across the board.
And then with the gels, I know this is becoming commonplace. If you're going to be taking a number of gels over a race, you have it in the flask as well, don't you, sometimes? Just so that you're not having to like tear, I don't know, like the wrapper of 10 individual gels, you'd put it in a soft flask, for example. That's becoming more.
That's just to hide the brands we've already got.
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah, true. But it's all, I suppose it saves it's to hide the brands, obviously, but it's also to save like the faff, isn't it? Because there's nothing worse than getting like gel over your glove or your hands. And
actually that strategy worked really well for Ruth. So she's really good because she just doesn't have, like Tom likes a lot of variation. Ruth like gets her head down and really works on it, and she's not as bothered. So we put variation in, but not massive. And she quite literally doesn't take on any real food as well. She'll just work through it, But with her, it's like, okay, well, you've got a new sponsor, let's put your gels in the bottle. But actually, these will come in really handy. And we did. So afterwards, she was saying, I kind of debrief. She said, they were really, really handy. But what we also found, her partner, Martin, who was crewing for her, who does a lot of the announcement, he does all the narration for UTMB and stuff like that, so people are more than familiar with him. He's a great guy. He was saying, but the problem is, with those flasks, Ruth would be giving them back and there would still be some left. And you think over, I can't remember what her time was, like 20 odd hours.
Yeah.
Like, actually, that's a lot of carbohydrates you're leaving in the bottle that are going to get washed away. So it's bringing it down. It might only seem like a small amount. Actually, it could be quite significant by the end of it. So that's the only downside of those bottles a little bit, because you've got the solid cap trying to get it all out is a bit problematic.
I suppose, like you said, with a gel, there's 100 ml in that. So if you take all that back, you're getting that 100 ml in there and then, aren't you? But if it's I understand that.
And with a gel, like if you're a tight arse like me, you'll absolutely rinse it as well and just be pulling it like you're trying to get a last bit out of the toothpaste tube.
When you get given them for free, it's like just when you got new socks at Christmas, you're just abusing them. Like,
exactly.
I'll leave that 10% in that.
Sort of really want to.
I want to know Chris's question.
I want to know.
Well, this will be like the non-runner one, but this is the data analyst in me, and I'm just hearing you talk about SPF, which I thought was sun protection factor gels, and so how does the athlete remember what to take and when?
I mean, that sort of feeds back into that traffic light system and that Tom's visual approach. He's mapping it out. But I guess I'm
thinking, like you watch F1 or whatever, and you hear them talk to Lewis Hamilton, and they're on the radio, and they're telling him all this stuff. You're not able to communicate with the athlete for 5-6 hours at a time sometimes between checkpoints, right?
This is
looking at a UTMB.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a really good question. So what we do is, do the plan. And again, structure it and talk it through so it's as simple as possible. And he's got all those cues where he needs to eat, or where at least you hope he'll eat. So that's all like really well structured. But then at the aid stations, the aid stations where you can have crew, they'll take the plan in on laptop and look at that and go through it and run through it with Tom as well and with Ruth and remind them and things like that. And then I'm always stood near an aid station, so if there's anything they need, like we can shout and I'll say everything okay. Usually it's absolutely fine.
And I think with somebody like Tom, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but a bit like Hugh, who was on a couple of episodes ago, his approach is so scientific and methodical. There's never any real margin for error. He's got that dialed in so well, and that visual representation of the race, what he's doing, where he's going, what he's taking at each point. It's almost like he's just going through a script, and he'll memorize it, won't he? Literally.
Yeah.
And that's how that's the difference between an elite top level athlete and somebody like me who's just rocking up and
around the checkpoint,
might just eat a pie at a checkpoint. Yeah.
I was wondering if like maybe they wrote it down, like you said, you're the goalkeepers for the penalties now and stuff. Write it on their water bottle, don't they?
That's fair point.
I wondered if they ever needed that or anything.
Yeah, no, but that's right. So it's that mixture of both. And as Ben was saying, I think it's that professionality of going in. And Tom's whole thing is like leaving no stone unturned. Yeah. And like he will go through with Joseph, who was crewing from, because you're only allowed one person at the crew points on UTMB. They worked through that like loads, just went through it. So it was in his head, and he knew I'd spoken to him about it like loads. But also with Tom, he's got his head screwed on. He's a really smart guy, and he's really professional. And so anything that I might give to Tom in terms of what he maybe have learned about nutrition, I got back 5 times that through his experience. And like he's just thinking about racing and all this all the time. So he's already got a lot of it dialed in. So actually, and same with Ruth, actually, like what you're doing is everything that they've got, you're giving it some structure and direction, validating a lot of that, tweaking it, testing it, and then just making a few suggestions, putting that back into the overall plan, and they're going out and doing it. So in many respects, it's not just me kind of constructing something out of thin air. It's basing a lot of that around what they know and their experiences already. Because again, this is the thing with nutrition at any level. You go in and you just try and change everything. People just reject it and go, whoa, I'm not having that. So you've got to do a little bit at a time. You've got to just change the behaviors, but work around someone's experience and what they already know and use that as a platform to build on.
Isn't it? Like we were talking about that study you were talking about just before, really, really interesting because it's in the field and it's not on a treadmill and it's different. And I guess as a researcher, you've like when you speak to athletes like that, you need to suck out as much info as possible because there's only so much you can gather in terms of data in a lab, I guess.
Yeah.
But when you're applying it in the field, one of the questions I wanted to know is now we know we've got a plan and you've got the traffic light system. What was the plan if it went wrong? Because it sounds like it went well, but was there plans in place if Tom or Ruth or any of us start feeling nauseous or wasn't able to take it on, things like this?
Yeah, it's a good question. I did have a plan B column.
Is that the pork pie?
Yeah, that was it. Yeah.
Me in the background with the
Change my
Greg's.
phone number.
Yeah.
It's all gone to shit, Tom.
Yeah.
Get this sausage roll down your
Delete
mate.
my Instagram.
Family pork pie, jar of Branston, bit of cheese. Just be plan B Ploughman's.
Yeah. Skittles.
Yeah. But yeah, that I never actually put anything in that column because I thought basically the plan B was just if you're getting gut issues, then we need to revisit your hydration and you just need to back off what you're eating a little bit and let your gut sort of reset.
Plus they're experienced enough to know that anyway, aren't they?
Exactly. But we've done, I think part of the thing is I went in relatively confident. Like my only gambles really is Tom going to be low on energy and is Ruth going to be taking on too much? And in the end, it was spot on for both because we both won doing the doubles. I was pretty pleased with that. But yeah, so that plan B, I was on hand and like we could have gone back to that, but I don't really know what I would have said.
Yeah.
Because I knew that plan A would work because we'd worked on it so much.
It's
yeah.
Like, sometimes I worry when people say that I've got an A, B, C, and D goal in a race. I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
I suppose nutrition is getting now to a point where just like the training that goes into preparation for a race, if you've done all those sessions and you've done the distance, you've done the mileage, you're feeling good, you know that you banked that leading up. You almost know, unless you've got illness or an injury, you're going to have a good race to a certain extent, aren't you? And I suppose with the nutrition, if you've trained somebody to be able to take on that amount of carbs, they're in a routine of when to take things and they're in that structure, it's almost the same, isn't it? It's just about having that training plan, but with the nutrition, eh?
Yeah, and I suppose there's also an interesting caveat as well to that in terms of that planning. So so again, like, you know, I know all the research, and the stuff around 120 grams. There's one really good paper on that, but it actually talks about recovery, not performance. So there's nothing out there to support performance. There's only a handful of dose response papers around carbohydrates, and all of them pretty much say, as soon as you get over 100 grams, actually, performance starts to drop a little bit more. Most of those are around time trials rather than an ultra. So whether we can use that or not. But anyway,
forgive me if I'm wrong, but that, like, none of this is based, like you're saying, they're based on a couple of hours, whether it's like the mountain athletes that were up to 3 hours and things like this.
Yeah.
It's not based on 19 hours plus.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, and that's a really, really good point you make there, Gary, on that. And again, so it's sort of thinking about that. But then I didn't manage to do it with Ruth, but we'll do it when she comes back to Europe from New Zealand early next year. But yeah, at the uni at Leeds Beckett, we got Tom in the labs like on multiple occasions. So again, going back to that research, I know that research doesn't exist, but in my mind, everyone's out there doing it and it's trending. And I'm thinking, am I doing the right thing? Should I be giving him 120 grams really? You know, you just get sucked into all this. And I thought, well, what can I do? I can test him. I've got all these resources. I know what I'm doing there as a physiologist. So we got him in the lab. We did loads of max testing, sub-max testing, which is like lactate threshold, VO2 max, stuff like that. And that'll give you a good understanding of fat oxidation and whole body carbohydrate oxidation. So the first thing that I saw was I like Tom. He's an amazingly fast runner, yeah. So he can run like really fast, and even at really high speeds, he's just using like so much fat still. Like, it's absolutely amazing. I thought, okay, right. So if he's on UTMB, he's going to be dropping down his pace quite considerably. So actually, we don't need as many carbs. It's only going to be these certain points when he's essentially going to run uphill. So I looked at all his other UTMBs and all his races. So we looked at his heart rate max. I'd looked at what percentage of that he'd been using on different races. And because I've got access to his training peaks, I just poured through years of data on that, which is really good insight.
And the thing with Tom, as you mentioned, his range of running is incredible, isn't it? Like what he can run for a 5K. He's competing with some of the best in the UK. He can do a podium style event at Sports Shoes and be right up there. And then he can go and win UTMB. And not everybody's got that range of there. So he has,
Well, that's it. I said to him, the first time he came in, like, you get some of the time to people to set the first treadmill speed for like a lactate threshold VO2 max test. I was like, we usually do it off someone's 10K time. And again, a lot of trail runners go, I've never done a 10K on the road. Right? So we sort of balance it out. But with Tom, I said, what's your 10K time? He's like, 28 minutes. And I was like, okay, like, when was that? He's like, last week. I said, I could go and run that tomorrow. I was like, okay, right, we're starting at a pretty high base already. So we could work on that. So that gave me a lot of confidence. And then I got him in the lab for repeated sessions. So we got him back and actually put him in the altitude chambers. So with my colleague, Barney Wainwright, we did some testing in there. So we tested Tom at 2,500 meters and at 4,000 meters. So we gave him a lactate threshold test and a VO2 max test at both of those. At 2,500 meters, he actually performed better than he did at sea level.
Wow.
He got 1K faster. It's like, okay.
Wow.
So we realized that even with that, people go off and they go to altitude for ages. And I question that quite a lot of the time. Think, because with Tom the previous year, he felt that the quality of his training had taken a little bit of a dip by going to teens. So what we knew now is that he basically didn't need to go to altitude. It was fine. It probably wouldn't get much out of it. The best he could do is go and run on the trails and make sure he's keeping a little bit lower to get that quality training, which we did. So again, it's always looking at...
I guess there is you got people, I mean, not everyone can go to the nth degree, but there is that trade-off versus going to altitude and struggling versus having the quality training for the same amount of time.
Yeah.
And just to jump in and add to that, I did talk to him about his approach last week, and I compared it to Jim Walmsley, for example, and I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here, but Jim had to go out to France to kind of get to learn how to run in those mountains and basically living at altitude as well, living in Beaufort, and he up sticks from America and parked himself in France, and with that you've got pros and cons. Obviously, you get to train on the route, that type of terrain, get yourself familiarised with what you're going to be taking on. But Tom actually chose to spend most of his time based in Loughborough with his family, and he said he would prefer as well to have the support network and his family and friends around him, and that having that kind of like when you're not racing, the normal life and being able to relax and not have the complication of struggling to speak another language, fitting into a different community. That trade-off, he said, actually worked well within his benefit. And the fact that you said he can just pretty much go out and run at altitude off the back of those tests means that he doesn't have to do what Jim does, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. And he only knew that through testing. So loads of people will go out and do a load of altitude training when they probably don't need it, because you think, okay, what are the demands of that race? Like is your pace going to be limited by your oxygen carrying capacity? UTMB, yeah, you might want to do a bit of altitude, but for Tom, we didn't need to do that. So again, staying lower, could see people a bit close to civilization. Psychology sorted his head out. Training wise, again, there's some really good research that shows like the more you know the course, actually, that's one of the best things in terms of improving performance. So he could just go out and smash that course and work on all the bits in session that he'd struggled on previously, and particularly over in the night as well, in the dark. And then again, he could meet his mates and stuff like that and get that quality training in. Then another thing we did with him was, again, get him in environmental chambers, crank it up to 40 degrees and above, and do a lot of heat tolerance tests in there. So again, another colleague, Dan Snape, we got Tom in, did all these tests and said, look, and again, brilliant. Needed a little bit of work, but anybody does. And it was just getting him prepared for that heat, because we don't know with UTMB. Some years it's going to be mega hot. Some years, like this year, it was colder, but it's best to prep someone anyway. So then we got him in the cryo baths at the uni. So we've got some great pictures. If he's in a cryo bath, and in the bath next to it is Johnny Brownlee. We know each other already, so we're having a chat. And then, we gave him a protocol to do at home in Loughborough, and then a protocol to take out to Chamonix as well. Did exactly the same. We didn't get Ruth in the labs, but she hooked up with Barney and Dan, and we had like some long chats, and they gave her different protocols that she could do while she was in teens and while she was in Chamonix, and when she was in Annecy before that is where she kind of lives from spring to summer. So we worked for all this, and then I got Tom back for some more. I realise this is a really long story now, but I'm nearly finished.
No, it's interesting.
But I got him back, and so we knew his whole body carbohydrate oxidation, but that's going to be made up of exogenous carbohydrates, which are going to be the carbohydrates that you're taking on board through a drink or a bar or a sandwich or a pork pie or whatever it may be. And then you've got endogenous carbohydrates, which is going to be your finite stores, which are going to be in your muscle and your liver, a little bit in your blood glucose. So we were kind of breaking that down to think, okay, if he's running at X, how much does he need to take on? So we got him in a glycogen depleted state. So 2 days before, I got Scott to set him up with some like really tough exercises, which are designed to be all out, which will just lower your muscle glycogen massively. And then we essentially got Tom on a low carb diet for a couple of days, just higher protein, higher fat, just cutting as much carbs out as possible to reflect as much as possible what might occur in that second half of the race when it's going to be glycogen depleted, because you can't spare muscle glycogen.
Yeah.
You can spare liver glycogen, which is one of the key things from taking in carbohydrates during race, but not muscle glycogen. So we wanted to look at that as closely as possible, and then how he would perform once we started to feed him. So we got him in the lab, cranked it up, gave him 110 grams an hour, because I didn't want to go too low on that. But from that, what I realized is his sort of average pace, he was burning, I think, I looked at it only a couple of days ago, I think 1.47 grams of fat per minute, even taking in 110 grams of carbs an hour, which would usually suppress quite a lot of fat oxidation. But his fat metabolism had gone up because he was in a low glycogen state. So instantly it was even higher. Like, whoa, this is off the scale, yeah.
Just to cut in, would that be in line with, because he's a 28-minute 10K runner and he's more efficient at that anyway, or is he an outlier in that kind of
Good question. Bit of both. More towards that first one.
Yeah.
The fitter you get as an athlete, doesn't matter how fast you are. Just essentially, the more mitochondria you'll have, and just the better you'll be at.
Because he's going to be more efficient and more economic in doing what he's doing, the running, isn't he?
Yeah, completely. Yeah. And then as soon as you drop that down, like if you've got Eliud Kipchoge in, he would be even though he's there smashing out marathons really fast, he'd be an amazing fat burner too.
Yeah.
So again, like I'd say naturally is genetically is really well set up for that. But just from being a professional runner that's doing 2 sessions a day every day for an extended period of time, then like he's going to be a much better fat burner. So, and again, it suits the sport and the type of sport he's in. But then I gave him stable isotopes as well, which are basically non-radioactive isotopes that you take the breath sample, you put them in the drink, take a breath sample, you send that back to the lab. You send it back, you look at whole body carb oxidation because he's hooked up to a metabolic cart as well. You look at all the different variables and that will tell you how much he's using exogenously from taking on drinks. And off the top of my head, roughly, that was about 60 grams an hour at his average race pace. So I realised that if we took him up to 80 grams an hour, that should sufficiently cover him. Because you take on carbs, some people will use all of them. Some people don't.
You need a tolerance, don't you?
Exactly. There's a kind of oxidation efficiency in there, which is some of the research I'm working on at the moment. So it's like, right, let's give him that little bit of a buffer. So we knew we were safe with 80 grams. And then at points when, let's say he's running up Grand Col Ferré, his heart rate's going up, let's go higher for that because we know that you're gonna need more carbs going up that section. But rather than just overfeeding you all the way around, let's just give you enough for those points when the demand is higher, and let's bring it down when the demand is lower. And some points, the demand was even lower than 80 grams, but we're just doing that little topping up. And we knew that he could safely get round on 80, 90 grams an hour, absolutely no problem. So again, rather than kind of just taking this, these big strokes and saying this is how much you should take an hour, it's really, really carefully constructed, like around kind of different aspects of intensity.
And it's like you say, in Tour de France example, a stage there, if you might hear that, they're taking 120, 130 plus or whatever, but like you say, it might be for a 15-minute hill climb at the end of a stage where they've sat in a peloton for 4 hours or something, doing 60 grams, or probably more, I don't know, but it is like that, take that snippet and try and apply it to 19 hours it's a bit of a jump, isn't it? Yeah,
and it's huge. And people talk, saying, I did X race in the States and this and that, and I took 120, 140 grams an hour, but that's usually like 14 hours. Everyone I speak to in Europe, and the racing in Europe is very different as well, in terms of it's mostly alpine racing.
Yeah.
But they will always say, like, after 14 hours, things change. And if you're going up to 20 hours and more, different kettle of fish altogether.
Plus, I always think as well, that, like you say, the terrain as well, just sometimes like the brain power of technicality and going up and down a hill for up a hill for an hour, down a hill for an hour is much different to a rolling trail race for the same amount of time. You could go forever on it trying to get into it. What I wanted to ask as well is, like, we could talk so much about the race and the strategy. How much input would you have on day-to-day life and nutrition rather than just a focus on race day?
Yeah, good question. With Tom, like a lot. So with Ruth, because we started working a little bit later, when it comes to her day-to-day nutrition, she's got some nutrition qualifications anyway. So she's really switched on for that. So with Ruth, when I looked at her nutrition, I made a few changes, but I realised you asked the question about Tom.
No, just in general, yeah.
I'll go on to, so with Ruth, it was like one major change where what I realised is she was taking on loads of protein, more than she needed. Nothing wrong with that, but it was in a really high load block, And I said, look, like, let's cut your protein back because we can still bring it down to a level where you're getting high protein intakes, more than you need, but we can fill that space with taking on more carbs. and that's going to support the quality of your training day to day and recovery. And then with Tom, we started a little bit early. So with Tom, again, like the first thing I looked at was essentially how he was fueling his training and what he was doing through his diet day to day. So we made some big changes there. And I think the first things were really about the structure of his food around training. So his recovery was being impaired a little bit simply by timing, the amount of carbs he was taking on. So we adjusted his like macronutrients a little bit. We threw a few things in there to change the timing to make him bounce back from his training sessions better, or to load up for the next session. And then we worked on that and tried to make it as habitual as possible. And then I'd give him ideas around his training. But again, like when I started working, he was about to have a baby. And then he had a baby. So things are thrown up in the air. So for his dinner every night, I'd say, right, let's work to this point. After that, here's some ideas, but you do whatever that's your family time.
Yeah.
So he took that on board and worked in that. And then, that was building up, because I always go back and say to a lot of people, like, that's a bit people miss. People say to me, because everyone's so focused on race nutrition, which is interesting. That's the sort of sexy side. Yeah. But people kind of miss out at day-to-day nutrition. Because I say, like, with Tom winning that race and with Ruth winning, they had a really good day, yeah. It was well-structured, everything lined up, yeah. But that is simply an outcome of all that work they've done in the previous weeks, months, years before. So it's that culmination of everything. So if you're nailing your nutrition day to day, yeah, then it means if you've got a really well structured plan, and you've got your head in the right space, then actually, like, you can probably get a bit more out of that. And it might be the nutrition is letting you down a little bit, and you just not be able to fulfill that prescribed training. So what you try to do there is just squeeze as much out of that as possible. So again, you're doing it a little bit at a time, but chronically over that space of time, it's all going to help. So again, a couple of examples, like really early season, like when someone comes out like the off season, I think a lot of people now use that sort of USCA model of coaching, where, and I've not done it, so forgive me if I'm getting it wrong, but I think that model really starts on kind of building up VO2 early. So usually there, I'd say to someone, okay, if you're building VO2, let's get you on the creatine. So first of all, you're going to be doing probably really, fast strides or something like that, or fast hill reps, which could be 10 to 30 seconds. So you'll be able to squeeze a bit more of those and recover much better for the next one, because potentially those first few, you're going to use like phosphocreatine system, and early season, you're probably doing a bit of strength work as well. So it's going to help with that. Then as you go on in those hill reps, get a little bit longer. So the point where I was working with Tom, he was doing like mega long hill reps, out in the Peak District and on the treadmill. So the first thing I did, said, look, do you want to try beta-alanine? So everyone is trying like sodium bicarb at the moment.
I'm going to ask if that's something they use.
That as well,
yeah. So, I mean, I didn't want to put Tom on the sodium bicarb in his training, because if he was taking that, that's 5 grams of salt, yeah. There's no way I'm putting him on that, and he just doesn't need it every day. It will help with recovery, but it's just unhealthy. So we gave him beta-alanine, which sodium bicarb works as an extracellular buffer, whereas beta-alanine works an intracellular buffer, so it'll buffer like lactate within the muscle, lactate and the hydrogen ions.
Yeah.
So it meant that over time, anywhere between, like, let's say a climb between 1 and 12 minutes.
And he's taking that like
No, he's just taking it every day. It's just part of his sort of normal nutrition. Like he'd be taking that, and it just meant, and I'm saying this, we've not got a control Tom, so we don't know, but the idea was he'd just be able to squeeze a little bit more out of his training. So he'd be able to squeeze a little bit more out of those hills and recover a little bit better for the next, which again, that culmination over time should hopefully help him. And then outside of that, like, it was just making sure that, well, number one is above performance, ensuring that your athlete's healthy and they've got a healthy diet. So making sure his diet ticks all those numbers. So he's making sure he's getting his micro and macronutrients in. He was getting enough fiber, enough iron. So we didn't need to supplement with anything else. In fact, he was taking certain supplements. I'd say, look, let's get rid of those. Let's take those out of your diet early on. And again, he was spending a lot of time in the house because his wife was about to have a baby. And so he was doing a lot of stuff on the treadmill. He didn't want to be away. I just put him on a low dose of vitamin D in the spring. And then when he went out more in the summer after the baby was born, we could take him off that. So I try never to put people on like loads of supplements because most people just don't need them. And we go put them in as insurance. It's like, I'm not making a dodgy insurance claim on this. Like, it's like, make sure someone's diet is dialed in first.
That whole thing, usually the people that don't need the supplements are taking them,
yeah, exactly.
taking the most, and the ones that.
But it means that people shortcut the diet then. I don't need to eat this because I'm getting iron through this, and everything works within the food matrix. Like, if I give you an avocado, for instance, like, you're getting some good fats through that, you're getting fiber, like, you're getting lots and lots of different things. And again, it's going to slow down your digestive system, which will make some differences. And so food is the absolute key. And that's the kind of number one. If you're an unhealthy athlete and you've not got a good diet, then your immune system's going to take a dip. Like, you might get injured if you're not taking on enough nutrition.
Not recover as quickly.
Exactly. The number one thing about you being a good athlete at any level is consistency. The more consistent you are with your training, so the less you're going to get ill or injured, like, the more you'll achieve. So what we want to do is ensure, above anything, that you can train consistently day in, day out. And as you say, Ben, recover well. So actually, you've got a good quality session the next day and the next day and the next day.
And the good thing is, it's like, we're not saying everyone has to take it, but like a vitamin D and a creatine and a protein, if people need it, it's like they're the ones that are low barrier in terms of cost and stuff anyway, and has got at least some research behind them.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like this you don't have to go overboard.
Yeah.
And you're almost periodizing that as much as you are your diet anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So that's it. We're getting all that sort, and then we're just looking on the side at the fringes to think, okay, where can we get a little bit more performance out of this? So going back to what you were saying about sodium bicarb, we had access to bicarb. So when Tom did his bigger training blocks, we'd use a bit of bicarb there on some of the really high intensity stuff, but not very much. And then with a race itself, again, I looked at all the data from like multiple athletes and thought, well, there's not much of a need for sodium bicarb for this, because you only really need it if you're going to be redlining something, if you're going to go up to your VO2 max. So if you're doing an English or British Champs Fell race, sodium bicarb for the win, and caffeine without a shadow of a doubt. Yeah. If you're doing UTMB, you're not going to need it. So just to double check, I got in touch with Lewis Goff from Birmingham City University. He's written tons and tons of stuff. He's one of the world's leading experts on sodium bicarb for performance. So I said to him, right, how would we do a stacking protocol, which is about where would we take sodium bicarb on this course? So we talked about it, went through the data, and he said, look, the only place, if you were going to take it, would be at the start when it's faster. But we'd already said to Tom that we're going to make things slower at the start. So we said, we're going to get you to take on water at Les Houches. So rather than everyone running through, we want you to stop and take a bottle of water. It might take 30 seconds. It's just going to slow you down a bit. So you're not thinking that I need to be leading this race. So he said, actually, let's not do that. Because he said he'd complained about his mouth being dry in the past and being thirsty at sections. I thought, that's just because you've taken a massive hit of salt all at once.
Plus, you're sending an athlete a message, aren't you? Take this bicarb and you can redline it for the first hour.
Exactly. And that's it. They might overcook themselves in the first few hours. And that's why I never touch caffeine at the start. Because people are like, whoa, I feel really good. I'm just going to go at the front. And then, you've overcooked it. And then you've still got like 15 hours left on that race.
Just with that in mind, so we talk about, sodium bicarb and caffeine for the short races. And then Tom's obviously got that specific nutrition plan for a race like UTMB. And we could even put Bob Graham into that sort of category as well, couldn't we? Because we talked to Andy Berry about that as well. And most of that, I guess, is fueled by gels and bars and, fluids. But then beyond that, let's say somebody's training for the spine as an example, or Tour de Glacier, where you're running for days on end, like let's say for the best part of a week, at what point are you bringing real food into the mix, and like how does that work alongside the nutrition as well whilst you're running, if that makes sense?
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. Like different complete. So yeah, a couple of examples. A mate of mine was running a couple of years ago, Ireland, but he was doing like the southwest up to the northeast, so it's like 1,000 kilometers. So we structured a plan for him. I was in the van, crew him, and after like 24 hours he was sick of doing drinks and gels and stuff, so we just went in with more real foods, a lot of wraps, a lot of rice, a lot of high carb, quite processed foods. And again, all the way through, it was just that we'd top up with a gel and a drink every now and then, but more often it was him going, yeah, I don't want that. And then a few other races have crewed on, like Tour de France and other kind of big races, which are like 200 milers. I find after about 24 or some people 48 hours, all the sports supplements like bars and stuff tend to go out the window, and people just want just much more real food. And I find it's more of a natural thing. So I try and put that in as much as possible and work around that, because on those longer races as well, like for the spine, UTMB, like I would not have an athlete touching protein. They might get a little bit through various foods, but some people will put a protein shake and think recipe for disaster that. However, on Tour de France or the spine, then people taking more food in, more protein. So again, it's just much more rounded. The only thing I would say to avoid is just don't overdo it on the fiber, because you're just going to get a little bit more potentially gut discomfort.
Yeah.
And just don't go in with lots of saturated fat. So don't go too heavy on the cheese or charcuterie that they often have on these European races.
Have the beers, it tells you.
Yeah, well, I did PTL a few years ago.
That's a good example, actually, isn't it, for fuel? And that comes into the same category as Tour de Glacier.
Yeah, and
depends how far down running holiday versus performance you're going to.
Oh god, yeah. And that some people go on that and treat it as a holiday. So it was like, I say a few years ago, it's like 2016 now, and we treated it like it was a long version of UTMB. It's not. It's absolutely brutal. Like you'll see the trail that UTMB will be on, and they'll just take you over some shitty bouldery section. You're like, why are we not 20 meters down on that? It's just the shit is passively confined. You're on it. So anyway, like we were going along, we bumped into this guy we'd seen a couple of times. He was just having a beer, like one of those Mont Blanc beers that you get from the Chamonix Brasserie. They are absolutely nice.
They're amazing, aren't they?
And I looked at them and thought, oh man, I want one of them. And he's like, look, he said, like, this is an alpinist. Like, you're not really going to do that much running. There's running and walking. He said, you're never going to get to a pace where this is going to matter. So enjoy yourself. Imagine it is a holiday. You're on vacation, have a beer. And he was right. When we got to the next hut, we had some food there. And we'll have a beer in that. And actually, just sorted us out, made us smile, and we just kind of carried on shit-faced after that. Like,
sounds to me like a run with a buffet.
Exactly.
Yeah. Sounds like my kind of race.
Because Riz kind of taking on a beer, and then there's taking on like 6 beers as well, which is slightly different. But yeah, I just like enjoy it. And used to do, what really got me into ultras as well, like years ago, was doing all the old long distance walkers association, like the four inns in the Peak District, and 2 of those inns had long closed down. It was a scouts race. I think we set up in the 50s, but that would historically pass 4 pubs, and we always said, look, we've got to be faithful for this race, and it still passes 4 pubs, but like 2 of them are different pubs, so we'd make sure we had a beer in each one, and actually just such a good laugh. And then we'd finished at Buxton Brewery and have a few beers in there, and it's like, all right, we're never going to win it, but we had a really good day out, and it always stuck in my mind because it was always some of my favourite times. So that's it. You just got to sort of take every race on.
Next year, weren't we? Maybe and
the Medoc Marathon.
Yeah, might get a plan off you for that.
Yeah,
good.
Yeah, it's like, well, that would be a traffic light system: red, white, rose.
Definitely.
That's a team race, guys, because I might be up for this.
Great, yeah. You've just sold it to us. I'm entering now because I'm online entering.
Like line stops and everyone fancy dress and
while we are talking alcohol, and not to like dampen the mood, but how bad is it for elite athletes? Like, I know I spoke to Phil Sessman last week, and came into the office. He doesn't drink at all. I know Tom doesn't really drink. He had a non-alcoholic beer last week, but like, how bad is it in terms of elite performance? It's all right for like us, isn't it? Because we enjoy it. And,
Yeah.
Well, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, there's absolutely zero
benefit.
Yeah, so when I'm going off on when I'm going off on a camp, like you'll get there and it, like for 2 weeks it'll be dry, it'll be nothing, absolutely nothing at all.
Yeah.
And like after a race, like there's a few people, some of the younger guys will let off a bit of steam and go for a few beers and things like that. And Dan Green's pretty good for a beer. Like with Dan Green, you can nip into like Chamonix after races and go in like what's it called? Big Mountain Brewery.
Yes, yeah.
He's good, but again, so Dan Green won Cocodona this year and got the record. Really nice guy.
He's young though as well, isn't he? So
Exactly.
So you can run up
bounce back a bit better.
Yeah.
And he's got that. He's kind of one of the sort of hip American kids who's
Yeah.
got a bit of a sort of semi sort of like craft beer sponsorship type of thing. Although I'm saying that, I'm sure he's got sponsorship from Coors, which is the last beer I drink.
yeah.
But yeah, so he's in fact. But again, a lot of people just don't. Oh, apart from
Guinness.
well, actually, yeah, some people, although we don't see that quite as much. But Francois Dane, sorry to name drop,
Yeah.
he'll quite
That's
often
a wine,
turn up
isn't it?
with his wine.
I was going to say, I've tried his wine. It's very good
Yeah.
as well. Yeah.
So again, in France, when the races are done or at the end of the camp,
I'd be turning up with it as well, though.
that's it. People will bring the wine out, and he'll bring some boxes of his wine, which is great. So that's all pretty good. But there's no proper drink.
I remember reading a book years ago, like when I first started, and I was a bit more kind of performance based, put it that way. I read that Haile Gebrselassie would have a bottle of Budweiser in his hotel room the night before a race to chill him out and everything.
Yeah.
And I've took that with me every race, not a Budweiser, but I'll have a half or a pint, like a shandy, before. It's just like a habit before a race, telling myself that I'll have a better night's sleep. But there's no way it is, really, is it? It's like,
It's probably just chilling you out psychologically.
well, that's it. It is all psychological. But I don't struggle sleeping anyway. I just like the beer, I think, now. It's just,
Yeah, as well. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, you're right. There's no upside. I don't
And the
think.
thing is, one beer is not going to make any difference.
No. There you go, Ben. You can have one beer now.
Yeah, that's it. I'll take that.
As long as it's not like Tennant Super.
Triple IPA.
Yeah.
Go to a race in Scotland. It's
Depends
like,
on the size of the
Tennant
bottle as
Super.
well, doesn't it? But that's been super interesting, honestly, Paul. I feel like I've learned a lot there as well, and I feel like I'm learning a lot whenever we talk about nutrition. But to have somebody on from an expert perspective, and not just me and Gary, like, talking about what we think we know, especially me. I'm clueless when it comes to this, but it obviously now is just such a big part of running, as we mentioned. It's very personalized and sounds like a lot of practice to get it right. But there is a method behind it now, isn't there? There's a science behind it, and I can
guess
understand.
There's a danger where, because just listening and thinking, and it's like it's very interesting for me. But I guess there's a danger in thinking that it's not achievable because we're using Tom as a bit of an example, and obviously it's funded and he's got access to all this amazing stuff. But it doesn't have to be like that either, does it? You can, like we're saying, you just start to make small changes, I guess. And I know it sounds like an old, easy answer, but you can get further towards that testing yourself. You don't have to be necessarily in a lab and all this kind of stuff. You test yourself and use yourself as a lab rat and as a guinea pig. You just have to go back to that to a certain extent, don't you?
Yeah, that's it. And a lot of it is about, and again, like these athletes, they know so much through just trial and experimentation and things like that. And then again, on the flip side of a whole 120 grams thing, even though saying like Tom and Ruth weren't on 120 grams, and I would certainly say for UTMB, you do not need that much, or any race that's similar to that. Again, I'd say some of the positives that have come out of that are the fact that people are taking nutrition a little bit seriously. And historically in ultras, people underfueled massively, and we've got loads of research to show that. But now people are pushing the amount they're taking up. So along the way, someone will find their own individual rate and what their tolerance is, and hopefully go in, and be better fueled and perform better, but bring some of that into the training as well.
Before we do go, I imagine a lot of people have found this as interesting as us because I've been listening to every single word there, like hanging on every single word.
My goodness, Ben, you think you have? You want to try taking the show notes? I'm going to need half an hour with Paul afterwards to sort some of these spellings out.
But if anybody wants to find out a bit more or wants to get in touch, I mean, I know you're working with these high-profile athletes, but do you offer a service for somebody who wants a nutrition plan? I mean, just say no now if that's not the case. But like, if
Inundated.
yeah, I don't want you to be inundated with offers if you don't want that. But is it something that you offer to like ordinary people? And when I say ordinary, I mean not Tom Evans or an elite athlete.
Yeah, but like, it's an interesting one. Guess how many people have contacted me since UTMB?
Yeah, I can imagine it's quite a lot.
Not a sausage.
Oh, really?
Not a sausage.
No way.
Yeah.
Maybe now after this.
So it can't. Well, it always makes me think. Like, I did put my prices up as well, but yeah. So sometimes I think, how serious are people taking nutrition? And again, like coming on this and other podcasts stuff, because actually I really enjoy talking about it, and I kind of want to get the message out there so people will take more nutrition. I'm not trying to pitch for business because at the moment, I mean, at any one point, I'll only take on a handful of athletes because that's all I've got time for. At the moment, like I'm not taking away on just because I've got to finish off my PhD and I've got the Salomon job as well. So it means if I took anyone else on, they would get quite a watered down service, which I don't want to do. But like, I'm always happy to take people on for like a one-off chat or a consultation, or if someone just needs a pointer, I'm just happy to help someone out rather than do like a whole massive package.
I always think like yourself, if you're not already doing it, even just having an hour's chat with people would give people a lot of value, wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
more than the in and outs as to the nth degree, like a Tom at the top level or something, because again, that might be a bigger barrier in terms of cost, but again, you can just see the level of detail that has gone into it, so that's why it's there. Before we finish up though, and you might be sorted, but because I was interested, the PhD or the study that you're doing in the lakes now, can you tell us about that, and do you need more people for that, or is it because I didn't get that far into it?
Yeah, I'm pretty far into it, so that starts next week, so I'm not sure if this will go out before that, but I have got another study stacked up back in my lab for starting early next year, which is similar. So the one in the lakes is it's a carbohydrate dose response study. So again, we're talking about like 120 grams and things. As I said already, like there's no research to support that. There's just anecdotal evidence, which again, some of it I'm quite dubious of. So this is basically just doing that out in the field. So it's what we call a crossover design, where all the athletes will do exactly the same course. So I'm basically running 2 ultras in the race. I've organised 2 ultras. I've got a group of 30 athletes who are coming down. They're going to do it twice, but then they're going to be blinded to their carbohydrate dose. So we do it once, and then we do it again. And then we simply look at like the times from that and look at the results to see, who improved where and how. And it's broken down. We've got like different timing zones and things like that. And there is blood markers and things we take and various questionnaires and look at like the gut and things like that. But fundamentally, that's what that's looking at to see, is there a performance benefit for someone who's, essentially someone who's a very good athlete to elite, like a high amateur to elite, which is, quite a broad range of people out in the field rather than the lab, because we do all this stuff in the lab, but again, you speak to someone and go, oh, well, that's in the lab. It's flat. It's on a treadmill. It's not like real life. So this is making sure that's as close to reality as possible. I've chosen the lakes because here in England, it's the closest we're going to get to like an alpine environment. So we've got trails, we've got the mud, we've got the climbing, the descending. So there's going to be it's a 50K course. There's about 2,500 meters of descending that. So you're still going to get that same climbing where actually you might put in a bit more effort. You've got some of that muscle damage, which will go into the legs on the descent. So it's trying to mock something up as real as possible. It's quite ambitious. Well, I'm saying it's quite ambitious now because I've spent about the last 2 weeks of sleepless nights trying to get it all done. I thought it was going to be easy, but it's not. But as soon as I get the details of that, I'll send them over. So we should have something a bit more concrete around that then.
Yeah, no, it sounds really interesting. No, thanks for your time, Paul. It's been brilliant. Really interesting. Yeah, and I think everyone will probably enjoy listening to this episode and learning a little bit more about what you've done, your sort of impact on the sport and working with these athletes. And I think anybody listening to this at any level can take something from it for their nutrition plan. I think whatever level you're running at. So yeah, much appreciated.
Cool. Cheers, guys. Thanks for the invite.
Without further ado, we'll see you next Tuesday for people on the pod. I might actually see you next Tuesday, Paul, because I know you come in the spa quite often. Just don't judge me when I've got a 4-pack of Guinness and a pot pie in my hand, do you? I did listen to what you were saying, I promise, but
I've never been so conscientious about what I bought for lunch, knowing that Paul was coming on the podcast.
Don't worry, I'm going to a gig tonight.